Hello everyone! Welcome back to our virtual classroom. Today we will be having a fruitful discussion about, and I am hoping that you are comfortable while watching and listening. Also, at the end of our learning session today, you are expected to master our learning objectives. And our learning objectives today are: first, state the characteristics of quantitative research. Second, elaborate the characteristics of quantitative research. And lastly, present examples showing the characteristics of quantitative research. And to start, let us do picture analysis. Look at the picture and analyze the message implied to fill the missing letters. For the number 1, we have 4 missing letters. For the number 2, we have 7 missing letters. And for the number 3, we have 9 missing letters. So, I will give you 5 seconds to answer each number. Timer starts now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer for the number 1, you got it right! Quantitative research uses numbers. Let us proceed to the number 2. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer is, you made it! Research findings are subjected to statistical tools. And for the last number, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what is your answer? You got it right! Quantitative research involves objective measurement. Thank you for your active participation. And this is my guide question for this short activity. Based on the presented picture, what do you think are the important characteristics of quantitative research? Alright, now, shall we proceed to our first activity? Very good! Listen carefully to the story that I will share with you. This story is entitled Manny the Farmer. Are you now ready to listen? Are you now sitting comfortably? Alright, let me begin. Manny is the only farmer on his town. The people in the town used barter to exchange goods or services. One day, he encountered problem in exchanging his vegetables into the products that he want for his item. He thought that if this continues, his vegetables will perish, and it will be a big loss to his family. While thinking for the solution, he decided not to join in barter exchange on his town anymore. People in the town became so problematic because they can't have vegetables through barter exchange. They asked him about the problem. Manny stated with full honesty that he can exchange his vegetables to all the items he needed because the other party is not interested to his vegetables. The elders of the town became so confused and fell into a deep thought. They believed that Manny was right. There is a great problem in barter exchange if the other party or the other people is not interested to your product or service. They thought that maybe they need something that will allow people to trade goods and services, to help them communicate the price of goods and something that will produce or provide people to find a way to store their wealth in the long term. So they said, money is right. We need money's idea. In a long time, it was changed into, we need money to measure the exact things that we want to buy. Alright, do you like the story? So please, answer in a clean sheet of paper these processing questions. Listen attentively. Number 1. Who is the main character in the story? Number 2. What is the problem encountered by the main character in the story? Number 3. How elders in the town solved his problem? Number 4. Do you agree that money can help people measure appropriate quantity of products they need? How? And last number. Do you agree that products must be quantifiable? Explain. And for the discussion proper, please listen carefully. And let me start with the context of quantitative research. Always remember, quantitative research is defined as a systematic investigation of phenomena by gathering quantifiable data and performing statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. To make it simple, quantitative research designs use numbers in stating generalizations about a given problem or inquiry, in contrast to qualitative research that hardly uses statistical treatment in stating generalizations. These numbers are the results of objective scales of measurements of the units of analysis called variables. Always remember, a variable in research simply refers to the phenomenon that you are trying to measure or investigate. Research findings in quantitative research are subjected to statistical treatment to determine significant relationships or differences between variables, the results of which are the basis of generalization about phenomenon. Now, let us proceed to the characteristics of quantitative research. Always remember, methods or procedures of the data gathering in quantitative research include items like age, gender, educational status, among others, that call for measurable characteristics of the population of the study. This means that the researcher breaks down the population's characteristics, things that are concrete, facts, and not up for debate. Number 2. Standardized instruments guide data collection, thus ensuring the accuracy, reliability, and validity of the data. There are several standardized instruments that are frequently used by most researchers. It is administered, evaluated, and interpreted in a consistent and objective manner, and is widely used as a method of measuring certain variables. The best example of the standardized instrument is the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children that is used to measure the intelligence quotient of children ages 6 to 16 years old only. Okay, for brief description, instrument is the general term that researchers use for a measurement device like survey, test, and questionnaire. Remember, there are differences between instrument and instrumentation. Consider that the instrument is the device itself, And the instrumentation is the course of action, like the process of developing, testing, and using the device. As a learner in this subject, you are all expected to develop your own instrument, or you will make a researcher-made questionnaire using 5-point Likert scale to determine or assess a certain variable within your interest topic, with, of course, available research literatures. Remember, instruments fall into two broad categories: researcher completed instrument and the subject completed instrument. Researchers, like you, choose which type of instrument or instruments to use based on the research questions. In other words, you will choose research instrument based on your statement of the problem. And the best examples of researcher-completed instruments are the rating scales and, of course, the observation forms where the researcher answered or completed the instruments. While subject-completed instruments are like the questionnaires, achievement, or aptitude test, where the subjects or respondents answer or completed the instrument. Another characteristic of quantitative research is that figures, tables, or graphs showcase summarized data collected in order to show trends, relationships, or difference among variables. In sum, the charts and tables allow you to see the evidence collected. And it is so good to present your collected data and computed data in organized manner using tables or graphs. Alright? Also, a large population yields more reliable data. But principles of random sampling must be strictly followed to prevent researchers' bias. Population and sample are two important terms in research. Always remember that. When we say population, it is the largest collection of items that we are interested to study. And the sample is a subset of a population. In other words, sample should represent the population with fewer but sufficient number of items. One population can have several samples with different sizes. There are various sampling techniques that you may use in selecting your samples from the population, like simple random sampling technique, which is the most famous random sampling technique. In that case, items to be selected for the sample are chosen randomly from the population. For example, let us say that in your respective school, there are learners who choose modular learning modality this school year. To know the appropriate number of samples from the population, you may use Loven's formula using 0.05 opposite, which means that your level of confidence is 95%. But don't you worry, you will encounter this topic in details in the long run. Okay? So, next characteristic of quantitative research is that quantitative methods can be repeated to verify findings in another setting, thus reinforcing validity of findings. This means that you allow for greater objectivity and accuracy of results. Generally, quantitative methods are designed to provide summaries of data that support generalizations about the phenomenon under study. Quantitative research designs are either descriptive, which means that the subjects or samples of the study are usually measured once. After they answer the questionnaire, you are done with your data collection. While in experimental research design, the samples or subjects of your study are measured before and after a treatment. But in this subject, you are just advised to use descriptive type of research. You will describe the responses of your respondents by presenting tables and provide interpretation of your treated data using frequency, percentage, and group mean. Okay, for another characteristic of quantitative research is that quantitative research puts emphasis on proof rather than discovery. Meaning to say, research questions in quantitative research focuses more on what, how much, how many, and thus to assess the strength of relationship or difference between variables under investigation. It tried to prove or disapprove hypotheses. For example, a senior high school learner in ABM Strand, you may ask, how may learners' perception on the utilization of modular learning approach be described based on the components like accessibility and time management? With that simple quantitative research question, it is clear that you will use frequency, percentage, and mean to prove your findings, or to prove your claims rather. Again, quantitative research puts emphasis on proof rather than discovery or exploratory like qualitative research. But to summarize the difference between the characteristics of qualitative and quantitative researches, please look to this table and listen carefully. In qualitative research, it is more on subjective. Answer research questions what and why. And the literature review may be done as the study progresses or there is a blank spot of literatures. While in the quantitative research, it is objective. You answer research questions like how, what, thus, how many, how may, is there a significant difference or relationship? And the literature review is usually done before the study, and that is called the blind spot of literatures. Also, in qualitative research, the researcher develops theory, understand or explore ideas. It's more on interpretation. Reports rich narrative, uses individual interpretation, and the basic element of analysis is words or ideas. While in quantitative research, the researcher confirm or test theory or test hypothesis. The data is measurable using statistical tools, and the researcher reports statistical analysis, and the basic element of analysis is number. Also, in qualitative research, the researcher is part of the process of the study. The people involved in the study are called participants. The reasoning in qualitative study is dialectic and inductive. The researcher describes meaning and discovery, while in quantitative research, the researcher is separate from the process of the study. The people involved in the study are called subjects or respondents of the study. The reasoning of the researcher is more on logic or logical and deductive, and the researcher establishes relationship and causation. Anyway, let me give you another concrete example that you might be interested, shall we? Let's say you want to find out how satisfied our learners with their studies? I will show you both quantitative and qualitative approaches that may answer this question. Let me begin with the quantitative approach. In quantitative approach, you may do survey to the 50 students or 50 learners in ABM strand and ask them questions like, on scale 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with your teachers? And in the collected data, you must use statistical analysis and draw conclusions like, on average, learners rate their teachers 4.6 out of 5. Okay? But if you want to use qualitative approach, then you may conduct interviews to the 10 selected learners from ABM strand and ask them an open-ended questions like, how satisfied are you with your studies? Or, what can you suggest to improve school study program? Then, you will transcribe interviews and look for the patterns or recurrent themes. Now, let us proceed to this essential question. What do you think are the differences on the characteristics of quantitative and qualitative researches? Explain each. And for the application, let me give you these directions. Try to imagine this scenario. Your school is currently facing big adjustment about the delivery of various learning modalities. As a senior high school learner, your task is to gather data by conducting survey about various learning modalities available in your respective school. Make sure that you have list of questions before the actual conduct of data gathering. Your research questions should be well written with emphasis on the variables that you are investigating. Write 10 questions. Alright, now let us proceed to our quick assessment. This is multiple choice test. Number 1. Research questions in quantitative research focuses more on blank to assess the strength of relationship or difference between variables under investigation. Letter A. What, how much, how many, and thus. Letter B. What and why. Letter C. What, how much, how many, and thus. Or letter D. How much, how often. For the number 2, quantitative research is defined as a systematic investigation of phenomena by gathering blank data and performing statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. A. Quantifiable. B. Narrative. C. No. D. So much. Number 3. Blank research means that the subjects or samples of the study are usually measured once. After they answered the questionnaire, you are done with your data collection. A. Explanatory sequential mixed design. B. Experimental. C. Exploratory sequential mixed design. Or D. Descriptive. Number 4. Blank, the samples or subjects of your study are measured before and after a treatment. But in this subject, you are just advised to use descriptive type of research. Number 4. In blank research, the samples or subjects of your study are measured before and after a treatment. A. Descriptive. B. Experimental. C. Exploratory sequential mixed design. Or D. Explanatory sequential mixed design. Last number. Wayne is a researcher. He used observation forms to describe the behaviors of the learners on his class. However, he used achievement tests in measuring and evaluating the learning of the learners on his subject? Letter A. The first statement is the example of researcher-completed instrument, while the second statement is the example of subject-completed instrument. Letter B. The first statement is the example of subject-completed instrument, while the second statement is the example of researcher-completed instrument. Letter C. Both statements are the examples of researcher-completed instrument. Or letter D. Both statements are the examples of subject-completed instrument. Are you done? Okay. Let us proceed now to the assignment. Based on the discussion and activities given in today's session, try to list down at least 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses of quantitative research. Wow! We successfully finished our today's session. Thank you for your active participation. Stay safe at home and happy writing, everyone!